I would just like it stated for the record that before I started filming this video, I scared the ever-living piss out of Keaton, which means that all of this is automatically worth it, which is good because I put wax on my face and I feel like I might get a rash. I have no idea how this looks on camera, but I feel like it's not going to look nearly as good as it did in my bathroom when I was putting it on, and I'm just going to have to suck it up and deal with that. If you have been here before, welcome back to the channel, and if you have not, I don't normally look like this, but my name is Alex, and today we're gonna have some fun talking about World War Z by Max Brooks. A book that was recommended to me both by Kat from Kat's Novel Adventures and Cliff from Cliff's Dark Gems. Both of them enjoy a good zombie horror story, but Kat is arguably the biggest zombie fan I have ever seen in my life. Me, on the other hand, not so much. In the past, I have typically avoided anything dealing with zombies because they're not really my favorite kind of monster, and I think that they're in the cheesiness level of, say, vampires, like a Gouda level of cheesy, where I personally prefer brie. Or a delicious mozzarella, I will take either. While World War Z is technically a zombie book, I would argue that it is so much more than that, as Brooks delves into heavy topics like the world structure, politics, the economy, warfare, told exclusively through a series of vignettes. Contrary to popular belief, if you have only ever seen the movie with Brad Pitt, which I have not, there is no main character in the book. The novel is structured so that an interviewer is going around to all of these different people across the world and is asking them questions, and the interviewer is never named. He wants to actually be removed, struck, if you will, from the history books because he wants the reader to feel as if they are interviewing these characters themselves, which I thought was a fascinating way to write the story, and I have never read a book quite like that before. All of the vignettes together truly function like a combination between a history textbook and a documentary. You will not remember the individual characters. I would argue they're not even really that important, but the narrative collectively that they create and show the history of World War Z, that's where the magic happens. I'm also going to go out on a limb and say that World War Z is not horror. It's fresh, it's punchy, it had a great idea with a solid execution, but it's not horror. I want to put this firmly in the genre of post-apocalyptic. What diminishes the horror and the trauma of the story is the fact that from the very beginning of the book, we know that the war is over, that all of the characters that we're being introduced to have made it out the other side and they are safe at home. There is no tension about what is going to happen to these characters. It's just kind of a matter of sitting down and listening, almost like asking your grandpa at the dinner table to talk about his experience in the war. It very much felt just like that. There were some squeamish things that happened in the book, but they were few and far between and didn't really have a great effect on the overall story. So keep that in mind. It is a zombie book, okay? You're talking about people getting bitten and pieces ripped off and being eaten. That kind of goes with the territory of zombie, but if you can handle that, I would argue that you could very easily dive into this book. One of the aspects of World War Z that I didn't initially notice, but then I focused on it and I couldn't stop thinking about it, is the fact that there is no downtime in the book. In most novels, when your characters are going on an adventure, there are times when they're having conversations with one another, they're going on a trip, they're walking from point A to point B. All sorts of things can happen in the middle of the story between the action. But because of the way that this book is told, every single vignette is just a massive info dump. Every single thing is important, and that honestly made the story so exhausting at times. That doesn't mean that it wasn't interesting, but there were moments that I was genuinely tired and I needed to put the book down because I was just absorbing so much information at once. I will at least give it more credit than my AP US history textbook that I was forced to read that was about this thick and honestly the most boring book I've probably ever read in my life. I loved the variety of perspectives that we get from these characters because we really go from one end of humanity to the other, and I'm not talking about just ends of the globe, though that is something that happens. We get civilians, businessmen, doctors, the grunts on the ground who are fighting the war, the military tacticians. I mean, really anybody that you could want to hear from, there is a character who represents that. So few authors actually take the time to think about the tiny minutia, the itty-bitty little details of the circumstances that they are putting their characters into, let alone on the scale of global politics. I am not going to say that if a zombie outbreak ever happened, because it won't, that's fantasy, but if it ever happened that it would turn out just like World War Z, but I will say that everything in this story is completely plausible and it makes a ton of sense. Like, Max Brooks is a genius, one of the best authors in terms of detail orientation that I have ever read. I was initially skeptical about the emotional impact that this book was going to have on me because, again, it's a zombie story that's not really my thing. It began kind of dry, but as the story progressed, the more dedicated I became to wanting to know what happened to the characters. My favorite section by far was Homefront USA. Chef's kiss. I want to talk about some of the differences between the movie and the book without getting into any spoiler territory. Most of these I was able to tell, honestly, by the trailer for the movie. I haven't even seen the movie, and I know that these things are different. So, firstly, again, there is no main character. Sorry about you, Brad Pitt. 2, and arguably most important from the trailer, are the fact that in the book, the zombies are normal, shambling, slow, decaying corpses. They do not in fact run, and they do not climb walls. Number 3, in the novel, it takes time for a person to turn into a zombie. It can take days or weeks, enough time that people actually have the ability to hide that they are infected, to try to sneak across borders and get places where people are safe. In the film, my understanding is that people turn almost immediately, maybe within a matter of a couple minutes or a couple hours, which makes it that much more devastating. So again, some Hollywood magic for you. Number 4, in the book, there is no vaccine that is produced that actually works. There is a vaccine, and it is I would say, significant part of the plot, but it does not happen at all like the film. Number 5, the book takes place over the course of about a decade. The movie takes place over a few weeks. How you could ever have the same emotional impact from the film as you would get from this book, I will never understand. And to be honest with you, now knowing the major differences and how they just completely changed the book, I am not sure that I am interested in watching the film with Brad Pitt ever. Now, if you are somebody who both read the book and saw the film and you think that despite the differences that it would be worth it for me to watch it, I will consider it, but right now I have no interest whatsoever. Overall, I gave World War Z 4 stars. I would highly recommend that you read this at least one time, even if you aren't a big fan of zombies, because I'm not either, but I think that it is worthwhile, and I even told Keaton that I think he should read it. We had a discussion about it the other night when I told him that I was going to do this review, and I started talking about all of these details, and I just remembered so much because the world building is amazing, and he was actually surprised at just how much I was able to recount. Not many books are really that captivating, and I think because I know now where the story goes, that's why I don't imagine that I will ever reread this, but you should read it at least once. I also should have known better than to put wax on my forehead, which is the most expressive part of my face because of how much I raise my eyebrows. So I just realized that during this entire filming, my wax on my face looked like my skin was falling off, which honestly, appropriate. I don't know when I watch this back whether it's going to look awful or whether it's going to add to the effect, but I just attempted to smear it back on my face, and I think that that's a good place to end. So I'm going to tell you all, thank you so much for watching, and let me know down in the comments below, 1, how you feel about my absolutely horrific makeup, and 2, if you have read this book or are interested in reading this book, because I would love to hear about it. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, that you all stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time.